Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, namo buddhaya, salam kebajikan, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua, dan salam harmoni. Today, in this video, we will present our final semester project entitled Management of Patients with Pulmonary Embolism After Prolonged Flight During Travel. Before we continue the presentation, it would be nice to introduce ourselves first. Our team consists Kadek Kofali Fiska Okaniawan, Komang Satria Jati Jaya Krishna, and myself, Ketut Bisnu Swarna Yuga. Okay, this is a content outline of the topic in our presentation that we will discuss, such as definition of pulmonary embolisms, epidemiology of pulmonary embolisms, pathophysiology of pulmonary embolisms, clinical manifestation of pulmonary embolism, diagnosis of pulmonary embolism, and the last thing is therapy and prevention of pulmonary embolism. Okay, the first topic will be explained by our friend to Jaya Krishna. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Vishnu. Today I will explain about the definition about pulmonary embolism. Pulmonary embolism is a partial or total obstruction of the pulmonary artery or its branch due to thrombus or other emboli. 30% of patients with venous thromboembolism will experience PA or pulmonary embolism. 80 until 95% originates from thrombus in the lower extremities. It's mean our legs, and then mortality within 3 months after diagnosis is 15%. Okay, next. So, how many individual with pulmonary embolism after a prolonged flight? In incidence of PA in record literature during flights is very low, at 0.4 per million passengers. Higher in passengers with a travel distance exceeding 5,000 km or duration of more than 6 hours in the air. Okay, next. So this is the pathogenesis about PA or pulmonary embolism. PA occurs when parts of the clots, its main embolus, detach and travel in the blood to block vessels in the lungs. And then as the venous clot grows, it extends along the vein. So this is the embolus, and then embolus migration. And then when embolus stuck in pulmonary, it causes pulmonary embolism. Okay, next. Pathophysiology of PA. Pulmonary embolism disrupt pulmonary circulation and gas exchange in the lungs. Also, clot formation or blood clots form in the legs due to factors like surgery or inactivity. In our case, immobilization cause the pulmonary embolism. So then a piece of the clots, its mean embolus, breaks off and travel through the bloodstream. Next, the embolus block arteries in the lungs, disrupting blood flow. And then pulmonary arteries tighten in response to blockage. Next, the balance between air and blood in the lungs is disrupted. The right side of heart work harder due to increased resistance. And then in severe case, low blood pressure and shock may be occurs. Okay, next. So pulmonary embolism cause a decrease in cardiac output, leading to disturbances in systemic perfusion. This is the table when pulmonary embolism make left ventricular prelude decrease and then make hypotension. Okay, next. Okay, the next topic will explain by Vishnu. To Vishnu.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. The next thing is how we can diagnose a patient with pulmonary embolism. There are three steps that helps the clinicians to establish the diagnosis of a patient with pulmonary embolism, such as clinical presentation, non-imaging diagnostic method, and imaging diagnostic method. The first one is clinical presentation. Patient with pulmonary embolism most often presents with dyspnea or shortness of breathing. And then most of patient will present the chest pain, especially pleuritic pain, that signifies a pulmonary embolism located in the distal pulmonary arterial system near the pleural lining. And sometimes patient will present a hemoptysis or bloody cough and leg swelling and pain. Okay, on physical examination, the patient is most often found in a state of tachypnea or breathing frequency is higher than a normal state. And then a patient will present with tachycardia or heartbeat is a higher than a normal state, sometimes with low-grade fever and jugular venous distension with right-sided S3 gallop heart sound. Okay, there is a clinical decision rules can stratify patients into groups with high clinical likelihood or non-high clinical likelihood of pulmonary embolism using a set of 7 bedside assessment questions known as the Wells criteria. So the Wells criteria can help the clinician to establish the diagnosis of a patient with pulmonary embolism. The 7 bedside assessment question already list on this table. The conclusion of this Wells criteria is if the score points higher than 4, that means the patient presents with high probability of pulmonary embolism. And if the score point is equal or less than 4, that means the patient present with non-high probability of pulmonary embolisms. Okay, the next thing is non-imaging diagnostic method using plasma D-dimer assay and electrocardiogram. Plasma D-dimer assay is a blood screening test that showing an elevated plasma concentration of D-dimers, which is an elevated plasma concentration of D-dimers are sensitive for the diagnosis of PA, but not specific, because even in the absence of pulmonary embolism, the patient present with elevated plasma concentration of the dimers uh, with myocardial infarction, sepsis, cancer, and other systemic illness. The next thing is electrocardiogram. The electrocardiogram of patient with pulmonary embolism showing us the S1Q3T3 pattern, which consists of a deep deflection of S wave in the lead 1, a deep deflection of a Q wave in lead 3, and an inverted T wave in lead 3. But the most common sign are sinus tachycardia and T wave inversion in leads V1 to V4. This is the electrocardiogram patient with pulmonary embolism. As I mentioned before, there are showing us the deep deflection of S wave in lead 1, deep deflection of Q wave in lead 3, and an inverted P wave in lead 3. The three main signs is common found in electrocardiogram patient with pulmonary embolism. The next thing is imaging diagnostic method using chest radiography, chest compute tomography, and pulmonary angiography. The chest radiography found the two sign of pulmonary embolism, such as Westermarck sign and Hampton-Ham sign. The Westermarck sign, also called focal oligemia, that indicates large central embolic occlusion. This picture is Westermarck sign. The next one is Hampton-Ham sign is a peripheral wedge shaped density above the diaphragma, usually indicates pulmonary infarction. The next is chest compute tomography. For patients with suspected PE, the CT scan serves as a prognostic and diagnostic test. It shows a four-chamber view of the heart and images the pulmonary artery. This is the CT scan of a patient with pulmonary embolism. As you can see, the RV diameter is around 47 millimeter and the LV diameter is around 30 millimeter. So that the RV to LV diameter ratio is around 1.5, that indicates abnormality height and correlates with poor prognosis. Normally, the normal ratio between the RV and LV diameter is less than 1.9. The next thing is pulmonary angiography. Is an invasive pulmonary angiography formerly was the reference standard for the diagnosis of PE, but is now rarely performed as a diagnostic test. Okay, the next topic will explain by our friend Kova. For Kova, the time is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity that you gave me. So, according to the European Society of Cardiology, there's a treatment for pulmonary embolism in acute phase. Next slide. Slide. The first one is the oxygen therapy and ventilation. As we know, if there is pulmonary embolism, there's a clot in the bloodstream of the pulmonal. Now, the clot can cause hypoxemia, which the condition with there is mismatch between ventilation and the perfusion. Administration of the supplemental oxygen is indicated in patient with pulmonary embolism and saturation oxygen below 90% by using non-invasive treatment like nasal cannula or etc., or invasive treatment like intubation or etc. Next slide. Advanced life support for cardiac arrest. So acute PE is part of the differential diagnosis of cardiac arrest with non-shockable rhythm against a background of pulselessness, electrical activity. Thrombolytic therapy should be considered. Once a thrombolytic drug is administered, cardiopulmonary resuscitation should be continued for at least 60 to 90 minutes before terminating resuscitation attempts. Next slide. Anticoagulant. In patients with high or intermediate clinical probability of PA or pulmonary embolism, anticoagulant should be initiated while awaiting the result of the diagnosis test. So yeah, like before the travel, there is a pre-travel consultation. There's a screening about our health. Like if there is a risk factor of the pulmonary embolism, we can when we wait of the diagnosis test, we can perform the anticoagulant so that the clot is not fully blocking the pulmonary circulation. The primary therapy for pulmonary embolism, like what I said, is what I mentioned before, to prevent early death and recurrent fatal or symptomatic venous thromboembolism is as follows. Acute phase, VFH, LMWH, or Fonda Parinux for the first 5 until 10 days, administered concurrently with VKA or DOAC. The total duration of the anticoagulant therapy is 3 months. Next slide. Thrombectomy. Thrombectomy is a surgery to remove blood clot from artery or vein. It is option for high-risk pulmonary embolism or intermediate high-risk PA patient who have contraindicated to thrombolytic or fail after undergoing thrombolytic therapy. So, let me explain. If the patient has high-risk contraindication of thrombolytic or undergoing thrombolytic but fail, we can use thrombectomy. This is the surgery, the intervention surgery. We use a surgery tool to destroy the clot in the pulmonary circulation so that the pulmonary embolism can be healed. Next slide. Percutaneous catheterization. This is for the the absolute contraindication to thrombolytic. The option is if the thrombus fragment with pigtail or balloon catheter, realistic thrombectomy with the dynamic catheter, suctional thrombectomy, rotational thrombectomy. Next slide. Prevention strategies. So what we can do if we want to travel long travel flight, but we afraid that if we can get pulmonary embolism. So the first one is stay hydrated. Drink water before and during the flight. So the good oxygenated or hydrated can cause a good for circulation for our circulation. Move regularly. Perform in-seat exercise and walk around the cabin. It is good to prevent vein thrombus that can cause pulmonary embolism. Compression stocking. We can use compression stocking. We can use stockings in our flight. If man can use stocking too, and woman can use stockings too. Consider using compression stocking to improve circulation. Educate about signs and symptoms of PE. So we should know about what is the symptoms of PE, what is the risk factor, and etc. And seek medical attention if symptoms occur during or after the flight. Next slide. So yeah, relation between PA and travel medicine. So before we start doing prolonged flights, we can consult first to our doctor. We can use pre-travel medication such as travel health consultation before travel, especially for individual with underlying health condition. It's advisable to seek advice from the travel medicine specialist or healthcare provider. The consultation may include assessment of the individual's health, identification of risk factor, and recommendation for preventive measures. Next slide. Here's the reference that we use to make our presentation. Next slide. So that's all of our presentation. We close with Om Santi Santi Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan bagi kita semua dan salam harmoni.